guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're looking at a scenario where the top 5 richest countries by GDP go up against the rest of the world. Basically, I was just scrolling through YouTube and I saw these videos from Ada's Pro, which are the strongest countries. I didn't want to exactly copy them, so I changed it up, and now we have the richest countries against the world. Obviously, the richest country is the US. The second highest GDP is China, followed by Japan, Germany, and then India. Obviously, a very powerful team. First and third strongest militaries, also fourth and seventh. Germany's a bit higher up. Lower. Germany's a bit lower when it comes to military strength, but they are still a fairly powerful economy. With that, let's go and begin. As the red team is going to have the immediate advantage with them being the ones to declare the war. And, African troops are, in Africa. They're not going to be able to help out the Europeans. They're not going to be able to help out the Central Asians. So in the beginning, Germany's actually going to start winning. They're just pushing out everywhere, trying to get as much land as quickly as they can. They actually decide to retreat from some parts of France. And Germany's going to try and play this strategically, and yes, I'm going by continents. They're going to set up along the Rhine River, a very large and very important river in the world. They're going to attempt to reach a very important part of the Alps mountains and follow a bit of the Danube. And up here in Czechia, just follow some of the mountains. They're going to use mountains and rivers to their, basically just their advantage. Usually, the Polish plain, the Great European Plain, is what kills Poland, but in this case, it's actually going to work against Germany, as Poland is going to use it to kill them. France begins to push into the Rhine area. Germany can probably hold all these front lines along with the Danish Straits, but as I said, Poland is really going to be the bane of them here, as this is all plains and Germany is having a lot of trouble defending it. Moving on to the Americas, our only country here is the United States of America. But they're going to have a pretty easy time against Canada. They're just going to push into the south. This right here is already easily 50% of the Canadian population gone. And when we add this, it's probably past 80-90% of the Canadian population. Add basically their entire Pacific coast and maybe a bit more land around the Great Lakes and just a bit more land in general into Quebec, maybe? Yeah, this is already 90 to 100% of the Canadian population captured. Down here in Mexico, they push into Baja and around the coast, while setting up around the Rio Grande, as their entire army isn't there yet, but they can still easily hold. With most of their population gone, Canada surrenders. And, that looks like a massive win for the red team. Canada is a fairly, decently powerful military, I guess, and a massive economy, over $1 trillion, with a not so large but notable population, I guess. The USA is also going to push into Greenland pretty easy. You just capture a few port cities and the entire continent's practically yours. They also make a landing on Iceland, as everyone knows Germany is screwed here, and the USA wants to try and get to them and save them. Those, $4.5 trillion from Germany could be very helpful for the blue team war effort. With that, the USA is now going to continue their push into Mexico down both coastlines, pushing past the Rio Grande River. And let's move over here to Asia, where a majority of the red team lies. With India, China, and Japan, all three major world powers and top 10 militaries, along with top 5 economies, is it even a question about how it's going to go in Southeast Asia or over here in Siberia and Central Asia? It really isn't. India is going to wipe out Bangladesh, and with Chinese help, they're going to push it to Myanmar. Yes, I know they're jungles, but at this point, it doesn't matter. Bhutan and Nepal, well, they're going to hold out. They are probably going to be some of the most difficult areas for India and China to push into due to mountains and mountains alone. There's going to be so much resistance there. I honestly wish the Indians and Chinese luck. But they will eventually fall just due to sheer numbers that the Indians and Chinese can throw at them. Sri Lanka also falls, and India begins to push into Pakistan, whilst China begins a massive push into Central Asia and Mongolia. They also begin to push out from Manchuria, as Russia has a fairly powerful military, but they do not have nearly as much in the Far East as they do in their west. Japan also does some stuff, capturing the island of Sakhalin and this island chain here. Those are curls. I don't think those are... No, those can't be. Well, if they are, then sure. If not, I'll figure it out eventually. As I said, Poland is going to be the bane of Germany's existence here. And with Ukrainian, Slovakian, Hungarian, just Eastern European assistance, they are going to begin to push into Germany. Germany, who's already way overstretched and with not the most powerful military in real life, although I do believe they could militarize. France is pushing past the Rhine, and Germany's getting collapsed from all sides. Even in the Alps Mountains, how did I forget? Even in the Alps Mountains, Germany's being pushed back, as on all fronts, the German military is getting completely overwhelmed. Poland pushes into Berlin, which is honestly kind of funny, whilst the French and other allies push into Munich and Frankfurt. Let's just go through it a bit slower since it's a major country. The Benelux and French troops then push into Bremen and start to threaten the city of Hamburg, Germany's last major city. Even here in Denmark, they're going to push down, almost fully cutting Germany off from the coastline and reducing them to such a small thing, it's done. With the fall of Hamburg, Germany surrenders, and that is one of the 5 Red Team countries gone. The weakest of them, yes. The second weakest economy of them, and the weakest military of them by far. But it would still have been nice to have Germany on your side, you know? It would have still been nice. From there, the Americans are going to decide, okay, we've already lost one. I have to finish up in the Americas. So they're going to just push around Mexico pretty much. I also forgot to color in Puerto Rico and Hawaii. Don't ask why, but I just remember to color in the U.S. mainland, nothing else. The U.S. is also going to take full control of the Caribbean with full naval superiority and air superiority in their hands, whilst the blue team is hoping on some throw people at the enemy and hope you survive tactics to stop the superior American technology, weaponry, just everything. The USA is blitzing into South America, making a landing beyond the Panama Canal to ensure they have access to it, and making it down to something called the Darien Gap. If you didn't know, such dense jungles, I do not think it would be possible for the US to move through. Of course, they could do it eventually, just like the Indians and Chinese are attempting to do with Nepal and Bhutan. It's just going to take years. This is already like weeks, if not months of fighting, and the blue team's even pushing back. But it is still incredibly annoying to get through, and many Americans would die just due to disease or other things that just happen in jungles in general. So the USA is going to go for a more naval approach. As I mentioned earlier, they have full naval dominance. They're going to push down some Caribbean island chains and make a landing in Venezuela. They're also going to make a landing in Colombia and a landing in Ecuador. Strategy here: make a bunch of landings, overwhelm the blue team, use superior logistics and technology to just absolutely obliterate them. Of course, nukes aren't allowed here too, because with 3 nuclear powers on one side and 5, maybe 6 nuclear powers on the other one, depending on if North Korea really has them or not, on the other side. That would not end well for anybody, as the world would most likely blow up, so let's assume no nuclear weapons are allowed. China is now going to decide that Mongolia is a little thing on their border, and although there is something called the Gobi Desert here, which would be practically impossible, China pushes through and captures the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar. And if you didn't know, Mongolia is the least populated country in the world, which means with the fall of its capital, it's already done for. With that, China pushes up and captures all of Lake Baikal and the surrounding lands, whilst continuing to push out from Manchuria. And with Japanese support, they push out a lot of Far Eastern Russia. Japan also makes a landing in Siberia and begins to push around the Russians a bit, with some American support coming in. So I don't know why these little, these 1 tiles on there. Down here in South America, though, Venezuela is getting absolutely beat up by the Americans. Ecuador received a lot of Colombian and Peruvian assistance, so they're doing fine. But Venezuela has completely fallen, and Colombia is starting to fall, along with Suriname and Guyana, and French Guiana also falling. Americans have a foothold in South America. Not good for you, but you may be able to hold out a bit, as the Americans are sending support to other regions as well. The USA, also so cocky in themselves, tries to make a landing in the Nordics. If you didn't know, Norway has some mountains here, and Sweden has some very, very cold forests. So USA is going to try, but in the end, this is just going to be a whole lot of Americans dead. They're going to get the landing, and they're going to get a bunch of useless islands in the north, but they finally realize that superior technology and military won't defeat the specially trained for the cold divisions that the Nordics have, and that Russia sent in. So they start a new campaign. This time, together with India, they make a landing in Oman. They push up into the UAE and try and guess what this is. It's an operation that the US probably picked some super fancy name for, but everyone knows that the USA is just trying to get some of that oil. How's this going to go? Well, originally very well. They push around into Oman, into the UAE, and even capture Qatar. With that, they make a landing in southern Iran and capture a lot of the Persian Gulf area. Although around here they're going to be stopped due to supply issues. How are they planning to fix this? Well, India's sending more and more troops into Pakistan. Of course, with more troops in Pakistan, it means less troops in the Middle East. This isn't good for the Americans, who still have a lot of troops there, but the Indians assure them they can get there in time. Let's check back in on our buddies, Nepal and Bhutan, who have been fighting for their lives here. How's it going? Well, about the same as it was last time. Indians and Chinese doing what they can, cannot push in. Trying as hard as they can, cannot push in. From here, China decides to go on another campaign into Southeast Asia to wipe out the entire, region, and it goes fairly well. They get down to Malaysia, and they get past Malaysia. They then land on Sumatra, and this is just, it's not going well. They then make a landing on Borneo, which is even less defended, and that's gone now. Philippines are getting more scared, and Indonesia is as well. Over here in South Korea, Japan and China have a joint campaign to take out the country, as it is another one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and the loss of South Korea would most definitely be a massive hit for the blue team. So Japan and China are going to start a long and drawn-out campaign in South Korea. Firstly, China attempts to brute force its way to Seoul, but that fails, so Japan makes a naval landing, capturing Busan. From there, China pushes around the city, and that goes a lot better, so they meet up their two fronts. Japan continues to push around the coastline, capturing many more important cities, whilst the South Koreans push back around Seoul and cut them off again. North Koreans and South Koreans, oh my god, that sounds so wrong, but the North and South Koreans are now working together to recapture Pyongyang. If you're wondering where the Chinese military is, well, it's deciding for some reason that Eastern Russia is more important. Why? Middle East campaign isn't going as well as they hoped, and they need those sweet, sweet resources. Sadly for them, they didn't realize something that Japan did. Thought they were stupid about attacking down to the Philippines. Might have been dumber to attack the Soviets. Why? Because these people living here do not want to be controlled by someone else. And they will most likely fight or just put up a ton of resistance to any invading or occupying forces. Of course, maybe not everyone's like that, but the red team is definitely going to have some issues in this region. China decides, okay, well, that didn't go amazingly. We captured some land, but it was very costly. Why not push into another very just barely populated region, aka Central Asia? They push over to the Caspian Sea and not fully cut off the Middle East, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and whatnot, but they definitely do break some supply lines. They then push into Kazakhstan, and this looks like a very successful campaign. Sadly for the Chinese and Indians, the African and European armies are now here, so they are not just fighting the Middle East and Russia, they are now fighting the rest of the old world. Over here in South Korea, well, China finally realizes what it did wrong and sends back the army. They then capture Seoul, and South Korea finally surrenders. From there, they use some naval dams that they were able to muster up and capture Taiwan, along with making a landing in the Philippines. The Philippines sent in millions of men that they had just conscripted and pushed them back out, although the Chinese are getting closer and closer by capturing this island that I don't know the name of. From there, India is going to continue their campaign into Pakistan, which has already been taking way too long, and India finally succeeds in capitulating the country with Chinese assistance. They meet up with the Iranian front like they promised, but in Arabia, the red team is kicked out. Down here in Iran, things are going quite well for the red team. They're pushing around, and the U.S.'s main goal is to reach this region, which has a whole lot of oil. So they started a northern campaign to distract Iran, while they start a southern campaign that successfully captures it. What's the issue with this? They're getting overextended, and the blue team sees an opportunity. Actually, they see two. See, China decides, hey, once so well going into Central Asia, why not continue? So they do. They decide to go for the Caucasus Mountain region, which has some decent resources as well, and just southern Russia in general. But as they're starting this campaign, they finally realize something. Even with a massive Chinese population, they cannot stop the sheer power of Europe, Africa, Russia, and the Middle East combined. And Russia and Europe see an opportunity, which they take. And now, like 500,000 Chinese troops are going to be captured or killed. China starts a daring rescue operation, which basically just reconnects the front with a lot of manpower and retreats out a lot of troops. Sadly for them, this is a very fast retreat, and the blue team uses this to their advantage to push right back into Kazakhstan. After this military blunder, the red team somehow thinks they can make an encirclement of their own and begins to push into Iran. What they don't see when they cut Iran into two, though, is that the blue team was expecting this, and they had a lot of divisions just past the red team's line of sight. How are they going to use this? Well, they're going to do that, and they're going to do that. And now we have another massive portion of the red team army encircled. This is once again going to get encircled or killed. Actually, they are encircled, captured, or killed. Chinese are going to use the same strategy, throw bodies, get out the other bodies. And now they're pushed out almost entirely out of Iran, in the north and in the south. The Caspian Sea region is now fully under blue team control, and the red team over here in East Asia is finally realizing they aren't invincible. Well, enough Chinese and Indian failures. The Americans decide now it's time for us to win. So they push into Colombia, push into a bunch of mountains that kills a bunch of people, cut off this jungly part, and the sad thing for the blue team is not only the invading force takes damage from being in jungles, so everyone here is just gonna die, and then the US is just gonna kind of claim it. They don't actually send in many troops, but all blue team troops in there are getting killed, not even by the enemies, but just by nature itself. The USA is going to continue to use their naval dominance, push around the coast, capturing the capital of Ecuador, and capitulating the country. So I know there are mountains there, but since the Ecuadorian government surrenders, all land is given to the United States. So yeah, U.S. progress looking good. Colombia's lost their capital, and they're slowly but surely capitulating. The USA is now pushing into a random forest and mountain, but the Colombian government has just sent in a letter of surrender, and the U.S. is going at it strong. They decide to keep pushing down the coast, pushing towards the Peruvian capital. This goes a bit less well, but it is right in their sights, and they know they can get it pretty soon. They still do believe, though, that if they knock out Brazil, all of South America will fall, so they begin to push around the Brazilian coast. The north is less important than the south and the center, but it is still some progress being made. Let's go back to Asia. Actually, no, let's go to Europe for a second. Germany tries to rebel and regain their independence, and they get somewhat far. The blue team had no divisions there. Suddenly, a German with a mustache, definitely not any kind of mustache or anything, gains power, and now Germany's rampaging over everyone. Sadly for them, the only reason they were even winning here was because full European armies were over here in Asia. What's going to happen the second those European armies get back? Well, Germany's going to realize something again. They have no resources and they have no help. And as soon as Germany rose back up, they're going to get absolutely obliterated once more, just further damaging the infrastructure and generally everyone who's in there. So yeah, Germany tried, but they were quickly shut back down. As for China and India, well, Bhutan's finally gone, and Nepal is slowly but surely dying, with the capital taken. This is seen as a huge success, as far too many Chinese and Indians died here. But they decide, hey, blue team made some encirclements, killed a bunch of us, it's time we kill a bunch of them. How are they going to do this? Well, they hurry up and take a few more Indonesian islands. Less important, they start a naval blockade of the Philippines. They decide knocking out the Philippines would be a fairly crucial step in the process to taking over all of Oceania. And with this blockade, the Philippines are on their own, and they are just starved of all supplies. So the red team makes multiple more landings in southern, central, and northern Philippines. Philippines can't really win this war. They're going to do their best, but in the end, the country is going to capitulate to a joint Japanese-Chinese attack. As for Nepal, they're down to a few tiny mountains and resistance fighters, but they are slowly fighting. Same thing's happening in Afghanistan. Red team sending in countless men to die. Afghanistan just fighting it out in the mountains. Red team does manage to regain some access to the Caspian, though. That's something. Russia, though, is pushing back down to Lake Baikal and pushing back the Chinese around Manchuria, getting closer and closer to the Chinese border itself. Around here, I think, is where I'm going to stop this. The U.S. is continuing to make solid progress in South America, capturing the Peruvian coast and a lot more of the Brazilian coast. But I don't know if they can even capture the entire continent. They have to send troops to East Asia now, and with Germany fully done, and China and India falling back, their final campaign looks to be Oceania, before they are overall just starved of resources and of the will to fight. So around here, I'm just going to call it a stalemate. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.